The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order! The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Dylan J. Schlender presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Schlender.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are hearing the case of The People vs. Eternals, a 2021 Marvel Studios film that explores the story of a group of ancient aliens who have lived on Earth in secret for thousands of years and must now reunite to save humanity. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Simon Majumdar, you are representing the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Hello, everybody. Now, the first thing I have to say about Eternals is the simple fact that the film seems to last as long as the name implies.
It's true.
Is hateful. And I don't say that about many films because I understand that films have lots of people who are involved in working on them. But I will say that about Eternals, despite the fact, and I'm going to come back to this a lot, it has a stellar cast. It is endless. The second point is the plot, which seems more like the plot they might bury a body in, rather than the plot of a film. It is as meaningless as the film is never ending. And you can find that out by checking it has 4 people writing it. Always a bad sign. Always a sign that people have pulled around with this the entire time. Now, it involves, just in case you wanted to imagine, someone living in London, mostly in Camden, as I'm guessing that was cheap to film, a visit to Babylon, which could be thrilling, but isn't, an immortal called Arishem, a rather dull villain, a few blips around other worlds and countries, which seem incredibly unexciting, and then, at the end, Harry Styles turns up. The end. Now, even by Marvel films, which are fairly ridiculous anyway, even the ones I enjoy, this film is, to put it frankly and legally, a load of old bollocks. Now, please, let me not have anything from the defense at this point, please. And finally, let's look at the cast. Now, I think that each of them, be it Gemma Chan or Richard Madden or Angela Jolie or Selma Hayek or Kumail Nanjiani, we're all thinking this was that lucky opportunity to get into a Marvel film. We all know they wanted to be in Avengers, don't we? We all know they wanted to be in one of those special films. Unfortunately, it was this one. They may well try to make another, but stars of this caliber can't be asked to wait for another opportunity. Even those who might not be as famous might have to ask themselves, what the hell is going on? I don't know either. This film is a genuine stinker. It makes Ant-Man look like it was a masterpiece. And that, my friend, is saying something.
All right.
Slam on Ant-Man.
I actually agree with his point on Ant-Man, but we'll get to that later. Thank you very much, Simon. Appearing on behalf of the defense is Mr. Maynard Bangs. Please present your opening statement.
Your Honor, esteemed members of the jury and court, I get it. Change can be really hard. When you get used to the way things is, anything that conflicts or threatens that comfort zone might be difficult to accept. And that, I think, is the plight of my client this evening, and also its strength. Eternals is an anomaly in the MCU that we've seen up to this point. It only has one minor connective thread to the Avengers Infinity Stone storyline. It doesn't feature any familiar characters reprising a role to help anchor us to. It even has a different sort of tone from other entries. It's an entirely new cast of characters, new actors, all new faces. It focuses on a completely different aspect of the Marvel Universe, both the Eternals and the Celestials, and their purpose in the grand scheme. Basically, this film is a pivot point in the MCU. It's where the MCU begins to branch off into another arc, another set of worlds, a new one. And with that change, heck, some resistance to it is only natural. But I urge the members of the court today to come at this change with an open mind and an even opener heart. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Simon, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Well, the fact that the film is probably about an hour too long, possibly an hour and a half too long. There are numbers, probably about 2.5 hours too long.
I knew it. I knew that's where it's going.
Probably about 2.5 hours too long if I was to And this is a film that is set in London, which I know, having lived there many, many years, is one of the greatest cities in the world. And this makes it look like Brighton on a weekend. It is dull, and yet they managed to make it look so dull. So the fact is, they managed to take this wonderful place, to begin with London, and they turn that into the emptiest place. They then managed to take Babylon, one of the great cities in the world, and one of the things I study a lot as a historian, and they managed to make that very dull, even with lots of animals attacking it. Then they make the dream of Arishem going up into space, and they make that look dull. And you realize that what they've done is they take everything in front of them and they make it look dull. And that, for me, for any Marvel film, is something. It isn't about tangential. It isn't about this. It's about the fact that the director and the people they brought in to do the scripts managed to do it badly.
All right, Mr. Mayor, would you like to respond to this dullness point that Simon articulated?
Well, I can't speak to London. I don't know whether it's dull or not. But
it's London. It's London.
But is it swinging London? Swinging London, okay. But regular London, I don't know. But I think that the color palette we see a lot is intentional and meant to sort of convey the bleaker, darker story that is going on here. It's not like Thor Ragnarok. It's not neon and vibrant and kinetic. It's almost the whole other opposite of the spectrum. It has heavy tones, heavy themes to deal with, and so its color palette is really sort of drained. As far as one, I thought Babylon looked sweet. I mean, at least the Hanging Gardens I thought looked pretty cool. But we only spend a few moments there. A lot of the time we spend is in a spaceship with people standing around, basically having philosophical discussions. So it's not that kinetic, it's not that bright. I'll grant you, but I also think that's not the point.
I would come back to argue that once you have people standing around in spaceships, it can be fun. I'm not saying that it is Guardians of the Galaxy, which is, enormous fun and meant to be, fun when they're standing around in their spaceship. But you can, even between that, have somewhere in between that has something where you could have occasions where they have something of worth to say. And here they don't. Okay, now let me start with the second one. And I will say that the second point is this plot. And I think this is where the cast have given themselves, the wrong side of it, because this is an incredible cast, and it is. You look at all the people who came into this, and they obviously thought they were going to be into something great, and they kept on saying it afterwards, even though it wasn't fair, that this was a great film, and they kept on. But you look at this cast, I mentioned Gemma Chan because I think she's one of the most talented and one of the most beautiful actors in the world, and yet she gets nothing out of this script. You look at Angela Jolie, who comes out and gets nothing out of the script. For Angela Jolie not to get anything out of a script, and let's be fair, this is a woman who's had herself in all kinds of films that are fairly dull during the world, but she makes them really watchable for her. She can't make this one watchable. You look at Kumail Nanjiani, he is so watchable in all films, and yet in this, you go, who is he? He tries to play a Bollywood star, and yet he is boring. He is so boring in this. You look at Selma Hayek, and she is outstanding in just about everything she appears in, not in this. And this is where I think they came into this role and they all thought, this is a good opportunity to get into, if you'll pardon it, the Eternals. And this will be a great opportunity, and we'll mix with the other people. We'll appear in this film. And I don't think they're going to appear very, very, unfortunately, I don't think they're going to appear in many films. Maybe they might have one more of the Eternals made because they've probably got a contract to do it. But I don't think they're going to get another film for me. And the person who I think comes out of it probably worst of all, is Richard Madden, who I think is probably going to be the next James Bond. But he ain't going to be Bond in this.
Mr. May, would you like to comment on the cast?
I like the cast. I mean, Angelina Jolie's character of Thena is very subdued, right? She's a stoic character. She doesn't have a lot to say. That's in her character's nature. So I don't know that it's so much a sort shrift for her. That is generally how that character works. Now, Kumail Nanjiani, I think he's hilarious in this movie. And he's probably the character that's closest to what we understand the MCU to be like. He's the most energetic and the most goofy. And I think that's why they walk him right out of the movie at one point. They're just like, this is not the movie we're making. We're making something very somber that is asking some deep questions and posing moral dilemmas. And we just don't really have time for your silly dancing stuff. And I think that's why he and a lot of the comic relief kind of leaves, before the final act of the film. As far as seeing them again, I think we are going to see him again. Not only do I think that we are looking at, not only do I think there are contracts that'll keep them in this, I think we're looking at a longer term plan too. I think we're going to look back at this film kind of like 2012's The Avengers, a big ensemble team up film, except it came first. And after this, these characters will fracture off into sort of their own little stories as they divide across the universe, trying to find other Eternals. So I do think we'll see them again. Will we ever see them all in one film together again? We might not, because I think we'll start focusing on them more individually. But I do think we're going to see them again.
I hope not that we don't ever see them separately, because together, and you look at that list of people, they are incredibly good. Now, you notice that I'm not mentioning the two people whose names I can't remember, which is a pain now because I had it written down. But the person who came with I think it was a Dublin or it was a Southern Irish anyway accent, which was the person who leaves, Drigg, who leaves the show, fairly on, and he comes over with a bad accent. Well, it's his own accent.
I think that's his accent.
It is his accent, but it's a
Barry
very
Keoghan.
Barry Keoghan.
And he comes over with this accent, and you're going, but kind of, where did you get that? Where did you get this Southern Irish accent from to do this show? And I think it's probably because it's the only accent he can do. I don't think when you see him in the Inner Spheres one, he is very good in that, because it's an Irish accent he's looking for. He's not in this, and he comes over really badly. And I have to say, I think the worst character in it, and it's not the fault of the person who plays it, is Sprite, which is just appalling. And I just, in the end, you made me watch this film today, which is the first time I've watched it for about a million years of watching it. But every character in it is appalling, but she is the worst. I don't know why she plays it, apart from her character is in the script. It's just an appalling character. So I'd love to know what you think about her, because I don't see any point of her appearing in it.
Well, I think Sprite is one of the more interesting characters in this film, because when you're talking about the Eternals, you're talking about characters that don't age, right? Which we would all think as like being very beneficial. But what's the double-edged sword of that? What would be terrible if you couldn't age? Well, if you were so young and you were stuck as a child who would be treated as a child forever, never taken seriously, obviously never allowed to drink, obviously not a romantic interest for Icarus, who she's obviously invested in. The characterization of that is actually from Neil Gaiman's 2006 run of these comics. That's where this angle of Sprite being a sort of dissatisfied person, based on not being able to age, really comes up and is brought up by Neil Gaiman. So this film makes a lot of allusions to different runs of this comic franchise, but her character is the closest to Neil Gaiman's version. And I think it gives her really complex motivation, because she's really not a bad person. She's got a bad draw in life and she's mad about it, but I think ultimately she ends up doing the right thing.
I will say there, as being someone who used to be in publishing and actually worked a small amount, but not with Neil Gaiman, this is not the character that he would have developed, I don't believe. So I find this slightly hard to put at Neil Gaiman's door, because I think you're just trying to use someone else to claim this character back.
That is how that character is portrayed in his 2006 run. That is that character's motivation and central sort of crux of their possession.
Then
so it did happen.
If he did do it that way, then he is a stinker.
Neil Gaiman's not on trial here.
But he does listen, so let's be kind.
Because I do think that the brief times, and I say very brief when I was at, I think it was at Penguin Books, but I know that he's would be much more able to think of a character more fluidly and thinking than that was, and I just didn't enjoy it. But I think in the end, that's my piece. Thank you.
Oh, very, very good then. Mr. Bangs, you may present your first exhibit.
Thank you. So, yeah, I did talk about, the change. So this is a new direction for this franchise, right? And with that, we're departing from a lot of the characters that we know, right? We've had about a dozen movies of Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, battling for some kind of Infinity Stones. And while those are great, I think they contribute to that feeling of franchise fatigue or superhero fatigue that is sort of plaguing Marvel right now. People have kind of been over it. And so I understand their instinct to try to head in a new direction. And in that, Eternals delivers. It delivers you not only 10 new Eternals characters, portrayed by some of the biggest names in Hollywood. Simon already mentioned them. Barry Keoghan, as you mentioned, actually was nominated for an Academy Award this year.
For this movie?
Banshees of Inisherin.
Very good.
This movie didn't come out this year. So,
which I have to say was also I found to be a very bad movie, but that's by the by. But he was one of the few characters in that I actually enjoyed, and I thought his piece there was very good. So this is not criticizing him as an actor, but the Dublin accent or wherever he is in Southern Ireland, I just found completely awful.
I don't know what he actually sounds like, and I also don't know a Dublin accent from anything. So as long as he sounds a little better than the Lucky Charms guy, I probably didn't blink an eye at it. But this film also fleshes out the Celestials further. We've seen them a little bit in Guardians of the Galaxy, but now we start telling a story that's more focused on them. We also introduce Kip Harington, who will portray the Black Knight. He also is spoken to by Mahershala Ali, who will portray Blade. And as you mentioned, we get to see Harry Styles as Eros and Pip in post-credits. So if anything, we're just introducing too many people for one film, because that's like 15 new characters for us to explore.
So what we're doing there, can I object? So one of the first things I say is the people who come into the film, talking about Blade, and I was a big fan of the original Blade, these all look fantastic. I don't find any of the original characters being great. So the other people who come in, fantastic. And I think they took the opportunity to introduce those. But all of the characters that I see on Eternals are just dull.
Well, I think I don't think they are more somber characters. I think for sure they're not animated and colorful. They're not household
Does that mean
names.
dull?
No, I don't think less animated doesn't mean dull.
I think it means really, really, really dull. And I
No,
think
because
you've used lots of words for them, but what you're really saying, is they're really, really, really dull.
I think
And these
some
are
people
great characters, great actors playing these characters, but I'm sorry, you can't get away with calling them all kinds of words when what you really mean is dull.
All right, we'll let the jury decide. Please continue.
Well, I just think that this is more of a subdued MCU movie, and it features more subdued characters. They're more thoughtful. It delivers a lot of exposition dialogue, a lot of, as I mentioned, philosophical discussion of moral dilemmas. It's a slow, more thoughtful, bleaker entry into the series. If you want kinetic, bright action, go watch Thor Ragnarok. There's lots of MCU movies like that. It's nice to have an MCU movie a bit quieter.
Okay, I'm going to object here because you can't take Thor Ragnarok, which is one end of the spectrum. I get that. But you can't hold this as the second, because this is indisputably a poor film. Now, you can have films that have...
I'm here to dispute it.
Well, you
He's
can.
paid for it.
You could, but you're not doing it terribly well, I have to say.
I'm doing the best I can.
Yes, the best you can. But you can't have something that is so awful that you begin to go, oh, well, it's this, and they're trying to do this, and everybody... Here's the thing. People are paying money to go and see this film, unless you watch it. Well, you're still paying it on Marvel, on Disney. So you're paying money to see this film, and you can't explain to people, oh, well, it's dull, and it's all a bit this, and it should be a bit more somber, and it should be... No, you have to get people in at the beginning. You have to get them in at the beginning. And the truth is that most of the people who watched this went, sorry, this is me yawning.
Well, that's not necessarily true. And actually, while the critics scoffed at it,
Order.
Sorry, now I've finished.
While the critics scoffed at it, actually, the audience score wasn't too bad. It's got a 77% on Rotten Tomatoes. So a lot of people did leaving this movie.
Wasn't too bad.
I mean, compared to a root canal, it's better. You know?
Compared to a root canal, I think a lot of things might be... Actually, a root canal might seem preferable to me than Eternals, but...
Well, you take the root canal, and I'll take Eternals, and you let me know how you feel at the end of it.
Okay, order. Mr. Mayor, let's get back on track.
I think one of the problems is maybe a movie like this is too complex for the prosecution to appreciate.
But you mean dull. That's what you mean.
Because there is no concrete bad guy here. The prosecution earlier described Erisham as a dull villain, but Erisham's not a villain. It's his purpose to see that the Celestials propagate, because the Celestials create suns and they cause life to flourish throughout the universe. So that's not a bad thing. He's a greater good type of character. Icarus, in that same vein,
killing all the people on Earth killing all the people on Earth might be a good thing, but you think that was fine?
Yes, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. How many billions and billions of lives were created? You know, the only reason
you are.
The only justification for why they want to spare the humans is that the humans were able to reverse the Thanos snap. So they think there's something very special about the human race that other races don't have. They're not necessarily... I mean, they've killed other planets full of people before, and seemingly never tried to stop it previously.
I think the human beings are the people who watch this film and go, "This is dull."
No, that's some human beings. No, I want to mention back, Icarus in that vein isn't really bad either. He's just trying to stay loyal to Erisham and see out his goal. Again, he's a greater good kind of guy. And then even Crow, the leader of the Deviants, the monster thing, he's merely killing for self-preservation of his species, for their survival. He doesn't want to be hunted down and killed by the Eternals, Maybe he doesn't want a celestial to destroy the planet he's living on. So the point is, this movie isn't black and white. It's not like a Captain America where the Red Skull's a Nazi and is so obviously a bad guy. There's not really a bad guy in this movie. Both sides have their points and why they believe that they're right in it. And it's this political fracture that within the film that leads to all the conflict. You've got moral dilemmas here. Druig, who knows he can control minds, says he's disgusted by the war and greed of humanity because he's like, I can just control their minds and get them to stop fighting. And on the other side, you've got Ajak. Go ahead.
Can I come in there? Because I think this is one of the problems you've made when we're talking about a Marvel film, if I'm honest. And this is more about Marvel than it is about this film, but it's true. People are stopping making Marvel films, we're going away from what Marvel is. It's fun. Marvel, to me, is about daydreams. It's about fun. It's about interest. It's about Captain America. It's about Iron Man. I've been watching these since the start. And I think this may be somewhere where we kind of meet in the middle almost, where you come in from complex and I come in from dull. But I think the Eternals, to me, is so boring on the side of dull, and you may think it's more complex, but I think that's a problem because people come towards this film from a wide range, and a lot of people went to see it going, well, that was, quite frankly, dull. It's endless. It's pointless. It's got no meaning, and yet it's Angelina Jolie, and it's Gemma Chan, and it's Kumail, and all of these amazing people, and I kind of wanted more from them. I would need more from them, and I didn't get it.
Well, I think if you got more, it would be even longer, and you wouldn't want that, right? They were trying to keep it.
You could cut out longer of them sitting in a room eating and whatever they're doing, and you could cut out people from a lot of those, and you could take it away. And I think this film could probably, even if you brought it down half an hour, it might have been more possible to like it. But at this time, I will say it is, to me, the bottom of the Marvel list for me. Well, and that's saying something.
I see that as being your interpretation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And one, I should tell you, if you like fun Marvel movies, you've got to check out Ant-Man, because it's about the most fun of all of them.
I hated
Ant-Man.
But
maybe you don't like fun either. I don't know, because it's lots of fun. They fight in Legos and Thomas the Tank Trucks. It's a lot of fun. But there's another side of the Marvel comic universe, too, which takes itself very seriously. It's out there. And this is a film taking an attempt at stabbing at that, and maybe the audience will reject it. The audience scores don't seem to suggest that. It's still well received. It's still fresh. But time will tell on how this is ultimately received as a film, because I do think we'll get more sequels. But I do think there is more of a complex story here. The philosophical debate, as I mentioned, of whether taking away humans' free will to stop their self-destruction, whether that's a worthy trade. That's the first thing that fractures this group. Later on, whether, the question of whether we should let the Celestial emerge or not. That's a debate we've had already right here. You think it's the right thing to do to stop the Celestial. I might be more inclined to go, no, let the Celestial come out. He's going to create, dozens, hundreds more planets. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. That's already a moral dilemma and a philosophical discussion we can have. And this film develops its characters by allowing its characters to have philosophical discussions along those lines.
Yes, but letting people pay to have you having a theological or a philosophical conversation is pretty dull. And I
take that up with Jim Jarmusch.
I look at yes, but that's a non-Marvel film. What people are looking for from a Marvel film is something that is going to, quite frankly, in this rather disparate times we have, it's going to bring them in. Everyone can go in together. I think Eternals is so unwatchable that I had to, even when I watched it today, I was having to stop, do something, stop, go through it again, stop. And it was all dull. Now, you can have conversations about philosophy. You can have conversations. I started as a philosopher and a theologian and all of this. Those are great conversations to have. Probably not in a Marvel movie. And I think possibly when I come down to it in the end, That's probably my argument.
And I can appreciate that. I'm going to close on my final argument, Your Honor.
Please do. Please do.
Diversity in casting. The cast of this film is diverse. You have Gemma Chan, as you mentioned. She's a Londoner, but she's of Asian descent. Her father grew up in Hong Kong. Kumail Nanjiani grew up in Pakistan. Selma Hayek was born in Mexico. Don Lee was born in South Korea. That's the good one. We can keep going. The director is an Asian woman. It features a deaf African American woman in a prominent role. It features an African American man in a homosexual relationship with an Arab man. It features both a Scotsman and an Irishman, and they managed to actually get along for most of the movie. In fact, of the 10 Eternals we meet in this movie, only 2 are white cishet men, and one of them is the bad guy. So I think we can all agree.
May I interrupt there?
Yeah.
That's one of my objections. You get such a wide and such a broad development of people who are all amazing in their own rights. They are all incredible actors, and I will agree with you on that. And yet they come to this role and everyone goes, ugh, it's all a bit dull, this, isn't it? And that's my argument.
All right.
Well, I'll close up here that we all agree diversity in casting is important. And what I like in this film is it makes perfect sense. Even the hardest of critics can't say it feels unnatural or shoved down their throat, considering these characters are the inspiration for legends and myths throughout multiple cultures. It makes perfect sense that they would come from a multitude of backgrounds. And on that, Your Honor, I will rest.
All sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Simon, you may begin.
I will point towards my argument before. This is a film that is too long, 2.5 hours too long, in my opinion. It is got a plot that is, as I said, a plot that you would bury someone in, not that you would use to continue a plot with. It has got, because the plot goes off on so many directions, what it's trying to do is to follow the comic books, which have got more scope and more depth in them. A film in this scape doesn't have it, and they've taken that by trying to make it too long. It's got the most amazing cast, and I won't disagree with the defense there, but it makes them feel worthless in this film. What it needed was to bring 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of them together and to build from that. And that it didn't do. So you suddenly faced with 10 of them, or however many it is at one point, and it is even then hard to kind of put each one together. So I think that this film, with all its cast, with everything it's done, is just the bottom of the Marvel list. And for me, that is saying something.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bangs, please present your closing argument.
Your Honor, esteemed members of the court, including the opposition, Eternals isn't your typical MCU movie, and I think that's been its strength and its detriment. It's more bleak, more thoughtful, more conflicted than typical comic book fare, certainly the more recent MCU movies that preceded it. It features a diverse star of actors, some well-traveled and known, some up-and-coming, playing a band of heroes that basically nobody had heard before of this, except for the most diehard of Marvel fans. But you know what else did? Guardians of the Galaxy. But the MCU managed to turn them all into household names. So it's good that Marvel rolled the dice here, taking a chance on a whole new angle of their universe, because if they just kept playing the same old song over and over, the fatigue of fans would eventually hit their critical breaking point, and the MCU would be put on a hiatus, maybe indefinitely. Doing the same thing, that can be dull too. So they have to do something to breathe some new life into this franchise with new stars, new heroes, all new worlds, and I think The Eternals has the dubious distinction of being one of the first films to go out on this shaky limb. But I think it's the right move to make. I thank you.
Thank you all. Members of the jury, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, and Mr. Life affords no greater duty than to protect Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
Right this way. I too wanted to fly into the sun rather than watch any more of this movie.
The bailiff always calls it like he sees it.
right, gentlemen. Ben, I know you kind of like this movie, so I want to hear from you.
I do kind of like it. That's the one point that the prosecution hit the most that I didn't quite agree with, that it's dull. Although I do agree that it's way longer than it needs to be. If they trimmed it down to 2 hours, I would have enjoyed it a whole of a lot more. I do sort of see the balance in it. There's a lot there that I wasn't seeing because I kind of enjoy films like Highlander, and I enjoy history, and I enjoy like sort of myths, like being exposed in like a different sort of fictional universe. So all of that is kind of what I took from it the first time that I really liked. But yeah, the cast is kind of 50-50. Angelina Jolie does look bored in this film. So does Gilgamesh. So does Gemma Chan. Yeah, Sprite, not that great. Her character needed to be fleshed out more. But that would have just made the film longer. I do agree with that, although I would counter with Kamal Nanjiani. He's great, especially his banter with his assistant.
He's the best.
Richard Madden's good. Brian Tyree Henry's great. Barry Keoghan's great. So about that, I'm kind of 50-50 down the line. So yeah, it's mostly the length and going against them trying something different. I personally can appreciate something different. I dislike films that are longer than they need to be. So that's where it comes down to me.
Dylan,
you see, though, when you say you're taking a risk, right? And that's fine. But there's the side of risk where it doesn't work out. And that's what this is. So just awarding risk for its own sake, betting it all on black and at a casino is a risk. And if you lose, you lose, I just agree with a lot of what Simon was saying. And dull really is the right word for it, trying to say like this is a more somber, more thoughtful. Well, yes, more than Thor Ragnarok, sure, but like more doesn't mean it hits the mark either, So this idea of like the myth making, like you were just talking about, Ben, I mean, that was the whole point of Thor, is that they were aliens coming down from another planet making the myths. It's just like there are no organic myths in the Marvel universe. Everything is aliens, it turns out. Yeah, and it is long. I do like is his name Kingo in the movie?
Yes, Kingo.
Yeah, he's great. And the valet, they are funny. And then Maynard's right, though. They basically shelve them for the last bit of the movie because they're like, well, we got to get serious again.
I think almost every character gets shelved at some point or another.
Well, I mean, they have to, because that was another. I agree with Simon. I think the movie could have been much stronger if they focused on like 3 or 4 and built up from there. There is just simply too much going on for you to have any vested interest to care. I mean, like like they mentioned, Kit Harington is in the movie for like a minute, and then he has like a sword at the end. And you would never know that was Blade talking to him unless you
is something.
Look it up on IMDb.
Back in the day, when they were like introducing those stingers in Marvel, I was in the know. I knew who all these people were, and I knew what they were setting up for the next film. Yeah. Now I don't know who these guys are, and now I feel like those people I was laughing at before, like, who's this elf guy? Am I supposed to care? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's so, but that's what they got to do. That's the nature. That's elf the nature of these
Styles.
You don't have to just set it up. You don't have to set it up at all. Just make a complete movie and then set up the elf guy in the next film. If that's what you're doing.
That's not how Marvel movies work, though. So they do have to stick to the formula, and
then they write themselves in a corner.
Exactly, and you could put a coat of gray paint over it, but it's still a Marvel movie, So I think I know where I'm leaning, but I'd like to hear from you, Ryan. Ben and I have been going back and forth so much.
Well, I mean, I make no secret of it. I am an MCU apologist. I will defend practically everything they do just because it's an instinct, and I have to have some kind of self-preservation, because if people don't like the things that I like, it makes me sad. But this is a gentleman's 5 out of 10. But what bumps it up to a 6 for me is the way that it looks. Like, I could stare at this movie all day. I love that it's shot with natural light, that it's actual physical locations instead of some parking lot in Atlanta. I absolutely adore the way that this film feels. I will confess that it is long, but then again, when you have 11 key characters, you're not going to be necessarily interested in brevity. A lot of the prosecution's words fell deaf on my ears. Like, all I heard was dull. I think that's the one word I could piece together from it. And I would say that it's not necessarily. I think that it's definitely an accurate way of describing it. And I have to appreciate, after we're now 13 years into this franchise, to actually do something different, I think on its face is its own kind of reward. So I'm going to lock it in right now. Not
As
guilty.
the foreman?
That's the
Yes.
foreman.
Mr. Foreman.
My God, everything's upside down. Well,
And
who do you
I
want to?
appreciated that my
Unprecedented.
nickname was not insulting for the first time in forever. So
Well, there's
I'm
no
feeling
good
good.
quotes from this movie.
feeling generous.
What was Ryan's lock-in? I didn't catch it.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Okay.
Well, who do you want to lock
Ben?
in next?
Now I don't know.
Foreman?
Yeah, now I don't know who to go with. I don't want to go based on my own personal feelings. I'm going by the court of the arguments. My own personal opinion is it's pretty good. It's a gentleman's 7 out of 10, as Ryan puts it. Although I'll have to ask him what that means. Let's see. 4 writers longer than it needs to be. Kit Harington. There's one more point that I agreed with on the prosecution. And yeah, that's the fact that like the villain is sort of dull. I do get what they're doing. They're doing some shades of gray there, but like the plot where it's like, okay, so this is an egg for someone. Like I don't exactly see the point of all this. And it's also trying to make some sort of weird statement that global warming is caused by all these gods and stuff. That wasn't brought up in the case, but I did sort of raise my eyebrow on that. So yeah, the fact that the villain is somewhat dull. That's a problem with most Marvel movies. The fact that the CGI is everywhere and it makes it all look less real. That is true with all Marvel movies. And yeah, it's not how I truly feel, but I will go guilty.
Oh, okay. Well,
Gee, I wonder what Dylan's going to say.
Well, guilty is how I truly feel, and I do respect the case that Maynard brought forward. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't get it done. And this one's guilty. It might even be worse than Thor Ragnarok, but we have to sell that on a different day.
Oh no, it's not. On the next Reels of Justice. Well, should we tell that very handsome judge, Mr. Foreman?
You're still the foreman. You threw us all out of whack. Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People vs. Eternals, we unquestionably find the defendant guilty of being a bad movie.
It's questionable. It's questionable. I heard that, juror.
The verdict is so rendered. I sentence Eternals to hide for thousands of more years, at which point we will probably be too stupid to need them anyway. Court is adjourned.
This is Hercules with a K. That's how you know I'm intellectually distinct. That and my purple lantern that can summon up energy. Mr. Maynard Bangs, you lost this case. Oh, sad to be you. What did you think of that verdict?
Well, I tried to put back, together the best case I could. I tried to present it and see it from the perspective of people who do like this movie. I tried to deliver what I think they would have said themselves. I hope I was able to do that and put up the best defense against this film I could. But I do think one of those jurors was pretty biased because he said he thought the movie was good, but voted it guilty anyway. And I think it's because he's jealous of how better looking I am than him. So I'm just going to storm out angry.
You don't need any more wins, that is for sure. And here comes Simon Majumdar. What did you think of that verdict? You are victorious, sir.
I thought it was... I'm glad to have won it. I do think that the defense put together a very sound performance there because he did bring in things that I hadn't thought about. But in the end, I keep coming down to it, and I know people were laughing at me for saying it, but dull is the word. And what happens is if you take a movie of 2.5 hours and it is dull, then people are just going to stop. And for all of that, they want to try something new, or it's not going to work. You could try doing that, but it's not going to work. And in the end, this movie is just dull. And with that cast, it's impossible, I think, to try and make a film, unless it's something like Eternals, and make it dull, because they're an incredible, and I will agree with the defense, it's an incredible cast all the way through. And so I just hope that if the next Eternals comes out, it'll be shorter, it'll be written by 1 or 2 people, and it will have a viewpoint, because I don't think this film had a viewpoint.
Well, thank you very much, sir. And incidentally, sound performance is exactly what my last date said. Let's go back to that studio for a post-trial analysis.
You guys know they're never going to make a sequel, right?
That,
man,
are they not?
might.
No, they'll pop up in the Avengers movies, but they're never getting a solo film ever again.
I didn't
because
think they would.
It
'cause,
did
I mean,
not.
well,
It
it
did
set
not
up one.
perform properly. It does. It does set it up, but
Well, it
I doubt
did-
that's going to happen.
It did happen during COVID, right? I mean, like that.
Yeah, but then
had
look
to
at
hurt it
Spider-Man.
some.
That made $700 million during COVID.
That was almost a year later.
No, that's 1 month later.
Okay, well, I would draw. First off, I got to tell you, Simon, I basically agree with everything you said. I thought this movie was very, very dull. There were far too many characters, and I really didn't enjoy it. But I drew the short straw and had to defend it. So I hope I did defend it well.
You did.
My problem is I thought it was rather derivative of Watchmen, right? In that the old group breaks away for different reasons, then has to come together to investigate the murder of one of their own, only to find out that it was someone inside who had betrayed them all. So I thought
I didn't even see that. That's
Yeah.
true.
I have to say, I thought from your defense that you probably were on my side.
I was like, because it's definitely it's not my kind of movie, but I love Ant-Man. I'll defend Ant-Man all day. I love Ant-Man. It's fun as heck.
I didn't. Now you people are coming up against Thor Ragnarok, and I'm probably
I hate
a bit of a fan of that, but not wholly. But yeah, the Thor films have been very, very difficult, I think, to judge.
I'm on the outside because I actually like Thor: Dark World, the second one.
I actually
one of the
like
only
Thor:
people.
Dark World too.
Yeah,
I
I'm
like
one of the
that
only
very
people.
much.
Yeah, and yet people hate it. When in all the reviews, they talk about the Eternals being considered one of the worst movies, and everywhere everyone goes, "Well, not as bad as Dark World." And I'm like, Dark World had the first Loki Thor team up. Like, I
Yes, it
liked
did.
Dark World back in the day, so it kind of pulled me back into the MCU because I hated the first Thor. I thought it was dull.
So, if I could tell a quick, funny behind-the-scenes story, the very first time I emailed Simon asking him to be on the show, he responded back, "Yes, as long as I don't have to do the Eternals. That movie is cinematic melatonin." And so we've done a couple episodes, and this time I'm like, "Simon, you got to do Eternals now."
I'll never come back.
I was hoping he'd use that cinematic melatonin line because I go, I have trouble sleeping, so any movie that can help me sleep can't be all that bad.
I totally forgot about that. I should have used that.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So, Simon, what have you been up to lately? What has been keeping you busy?
Well, we've been filming Tournament of Champions, which is starting on Friday, the 19th of February. So that's coming up. And so myself and Justin are the two commentators. So we go through all the chefs can't mention what they're doing to the judges. They disappear off and we mention what they're doing. So we understand what they're doing. And that's why we're the commentators. We understand what food is. And that's really fun. We've got a show out tomorrow, me and Justin, which is kind of like a grudge super chef matchup. We've got lots of other shows. And then I've got a lot of events going around. So I've got some of the more kind of intellectual ones that I'm doing. So I'm doing a show that's going to be on Zoom with it's about plant life in India, and then I'm doing some shows for people in their events. So I've got a lot going on right now, which is great, which is really, really great, which has been fantastic. And we just did the first season for this year of interviews. So we did, Andrew Zimmern, and we did lots of people for those shows. So we did about 6 of those. And then I couldn't do it for the beginning of this season. I'm starting to write now some episodes for the next season. This is called Eat My Globe, and it's a popular podcast based on food history. So we've got things on the history of corn, the history of chicken, the history of all of these, which we think don't really have. We think, oh, well, this is something we're used to, but you realize they all have great histories that have changed the way we live as a person, because corn started in South America and how it ended up all around the world is a fascinating history.
Chili pepper too, yeah.
Yeah, I always love, I think we always bring it up when you come on too, but it's like, I love the idea of the first person to have ever used a food for something I think there's that meme going around. It's like, how many things did we pop until we found out corn was the best one?
Well, I'm going to talk about, I talk about how popcorn, for example, became the most popular snack at cinemas. We talk about that, obviously. And I'm going to talk about that and how it started being sold outside until the cinemas said, well, this is easy, so we'll bring it inside. So they cut out all these people who were selling it outside and started selling it inside. And it just became this thing in America and then went around the world. And so popcorn and movies, people talk about it all the time now. But you're going, really? Popcorn? But it's how it works. And you smother it in butter, you smother it in all kinds of stuff, which is disgusting in the main. But
you charge it 40 times what it costs to make.
And exactly. And it costs almost nothing. It's really fascinating. Same with chicken. Did you know that chicken has the same DNA as Tyrannosaurus Rex, for example?
Yes.
Yep. Whoa!
Yeah.
I want a T-Rex egg now. I want a T-Rex egg.
Yeah. I'm in a lot of dinosaur groups, and there's a lot of people who rally against it. But yeah, I mean, the more they find out, especially a lot of the predators, like
it's all about that hip bone that they share.
Yeah, well, but also a lot of them probably were more feathered. I mean, probably raptors were probably almost all feathers, but they think even T-Rexes probably had some, like, at least like little flourishes of it.
Well, because the T-Rex came from, they believe, a feathered creature, and I can't remember which one it is now, but so there's lots.
They don't know what came first, the T-Rex or the egg.
Oh, boo. I knew you were going to do it. I knew you were going to do it the second you said.
Hey, Simon, is the biggest egg I can get commercially an ostrich egg, or is there something bigger?
The biggest one you can get commercially, I mean, it is hard to get, if you're in supermarkets and stuff, but you can get it. Yeah, that's probably the biggest you can get now.
I recommend the Komodo dragon egg, but they are hard to get. You got to be fast.
But it is, all the eggs of different types are all delicious. I love duck eggs, for example. But I tend to use those if I use them in cakes and things like that.
Are they affected really by the avian flu? We should all switch to duck for a while, or ostrich.
Oh no, I was saying what I tend to use a lot, or will use, is duck eggs, which are really delicious. But I tend not to use them for a fry-up or whatever we use them in it. I tend to use those to mix in cakes rather than, to be eaten directly, because I just think they're too rich. But
is it because they're like thicker too? The last time I cooked duck eggs, I thought they seemed a little thicker than normal chicken eggs.
Oh yeah, they are. They're a lot thicker, and to me they don't have flavor that you have for an egg from chickens. But they have a beautiful richness to them, and if you put those in a cake or something, I said that's really delicious.
All right, next time I'm baking, I'm doing duck eggs. I'm doing that.
Me too.
Hey, if they fit the bill.
And quail eggs. Thank you. Quail eggs as well, which are just that small, delicious little thing, and you could put them in a Scotch egg, and that's beautiful too. But if you want to do a little one with just quail egg inside them, and do that, that's a great one to serve as a little appetizer, thing when you have people running around. I've been doing that, and I've got lots of those episodes to write. So I've got a lot to do this year, a lot.
All right, and we definitely look forward to hearing it more. We always learn stuff when you're on here, so that's why everyone should definitely check out Eat My Globe. Now, we always ask our guests for a movie that you think people should see. So what is a film that you think people should see? Okay,
well, my film I think that people should see, because it's, I think, a film that many people now, anyway, have missed, is The Man Who Would Be King, which is Sean Connery and Michael Caine, talking about they basically have been put in charge. They get noticed, shall we say, by these people who are of this village in Afghanistan, and they get treated as gods until someone sees that one of them gets cut, and then they get thrown out. But it's a great film. It's a funny film. It's two people acting at the best of their abilities, really, really, and two people who are obviously good friends with each other. And I really love that film. I love that film. Was it The Man Who Would Be King, or was it The Man?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
sounds
and
right
that to me is a film that people who watch now probably haven't seen. But these are two of the giants of acting going back, and I think it's they're no longer with us. Oh well, Michael Caine is. I beg your pardon, but. Yeah, yes, he is.
He's
Watch,
immortal,
he
sir.
dies before this episode
Oh,
comes
no.
out.
You're
no,
sick,
no.
Ryan. No,
Please,
it happens.
I met him once very briefly doing something, but he's a nice chap as well. So that's the one I would give a try to.
Yeah, we just we covered his movie Sleuth with Laurence Olivier
Oh, yeah.
recently. So that was a fun
Which one? 'Cause he
Sleuth.
No, but he did it twice, if I remember
Yes,
right.
with his
the
first
first
one.
one.
The first one
original,
with Laurence
yeah.
Olivier.
Yeah.
But he did
Because
do the
he did
remake
it again
too. You're
with
right.
someone. I can't remember who that was.
Jude Law.
Jude Law.
Jude Law. There you go. Yes, I think much as I love Jude Law, I think Laurence Olivier was probably the deservance of that. But that's a great film as well.
Yeah. Well, when Kane does it again, he plays Olivier's character, and then Jude Law plays Kane's.
He probably, yes, he very probably would. I think he's probably semi-retired now, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's got to be pushing like 86. Jude Law.
I think probably a little more than that, if I'm
Yeah,
right.
he could be.
Yeah, but he can go forever. He's Michael.
I think a lot of these people who I watched when I grew up, Gene Hackman, all of these, they were all just genuine actors. And I think we're beginning to get some of these people, women and men now, who are beginning to become part of that, who are younger and fitter, younger and can do these roles really well. And I think luckily now we're in a very good period of incredible actors and actresses, but I like to call them all actors. And I think we're in a really fortunate position. And actually, if you look at, what we just look like, Eternals, we've got a lot of them in there.
I agree.
Yeah.
It is a good time to be doing a movie podcast.
Yes, I imagine it is. Probably not a good time to be doing eating out and about, but luckily mine's just about food history.
It'll boom again soon.
Yes.
So for my recommendation this week, we've been speaking about, speaking of films that may have been too slow in plotting for your average moviegoer, that describes my recommendation this week quite well. 2022's Skinamarink, written and directed by Kyle Edward Ball. Skinamarink, Ben.
It's your recommendation. You can recommend it if you want to.
It tells the story of two young children who awake in the middle of the night to find their father, as well as all the doors and windows of their house, have disappeared, leaving them alone, scared and confused with a sinister entity that prefers to lurk in the darkness. Made on a shoestring budget of $15,000 and having grossed over $2 million at the box office, this experimental horror film is proof that there is a market for low-budget film as long as your concept is strong, although I imagine more than a few people left their showing having absolutely hated it, huh, Ben? Because Skinamarink is slow. Slow isn't even fair. It is almost unmoving. It is largely made up of long shots of dark rooms and hallways, interspersed with repetitive clips of public domain cartoons. You never see anyone's face. It is shot from a child's perspective, very low, leaving you with a sense of helplessness and anxiety as the dark walls tower over you. And all of this is to create a nightmare-like environment reminiscent of our childhood fears. Vague shapes moving just out of our periphery, disembodied voices whispering our name. The entire film is meant to leave you feeling disoriented and trapped. I spent a lot of the film bewildered, but incredibly anxious. I wanted answers that the film never feels compelled to give you, because its purpose is to unsettle you. Comparisons have been drawn to David Lynch and Nicholas Winding Refn. Critics describe this film as slow cinema's answer to elevated horror. Again, I think a lot of people will hate this movie. They'll find it dull. But I think the filmmaker succeeded in creating a cinematic representation of our childhood nightmares very well, and I think it will stick with viewers for days afterwards. Skinamarink is currently streaming on Shudder. Watch it in the dark and watch it alone. Didn't like it, huh, Ben?
Actually, I haven't seen it, but everything I've heard is not good.
Oh, screw those people.
It's a gentleman's 1 out of 10, though.
Screw those people.
The more I think about it, the more I like it.
See? Yep, but it is slow. Maybe a little too artsy-fartsy for you, Ben. Schlenzo, what's your recommendation?
Again, haven't seen it.
Well, thank you. So, for an ensemble movie worth checking out, I highly recommend The Expendables. Released in 2010, it's an action-packed movie with an all-star cast, including, but not limited to, Sly Stallone, Jason Statham, Jet Li, Dolph Lundgren, and as I said, not limited to, ergo, many more. The film is a nostalgic throwback to the classic action movies of the 80s and 90s, and it delivers with nonstop excitement, humor, and memorable effects. If you're a fan of the genre, this film is a must-watch. Put it at the top of your list for a fun ride. Start to finish. Then you can stop.
Watch it
Stop
backwards.
to finish this recommendation, am I right?
Oh,
Just
you
for
got
that
me.
one, Ryan,
You got me.
what's your recommendation?
My recommendation this week concerns the director of this week's trial, Chloe Zhao, and it's the film she made immediately before Eternals, 2017's The Writer. I was weighing on whether or not to do Nomadland instead, but I think it already has the greater visibility, and I want to promote the underdog. The film is understated and deeply humanist, and the photography and genuine performances, mostly from non-professionals, reminds me greatly of some of Terrence Malick's recent output. The Writer is currently streaming on Hulu.
Big Ben, you're going to send us on home?
Yes, in honor of our gourmand guest today, I'm going to recommend one of my all-time favorite food films, and that's Tampopo. There's no film like a Japanese film food. They absolutely have the corner market on the genre. And if you watch this film and aren't thinking about having a second or even third dinner afterwards, I'm not sure I'll ever understand you. But from its opening segment about how the master appreciates his ramen noodles, focusing on the sights, smells, and textures of the dish, for minutes before he even takes his first bite, through its many vignettes about how to order food and how the Japanese kiss by passing an egg yolk back and forth without breaking it,
Ooh.
and its main plot about a crew trying to set up the perfect ramen restaurant. There's so much to enjoy in this comedy. And the next time you're in a Japanese restaurant, it will surely alter the way that you look at your soup. And it's streaming on HBO Max and the Criterion Channel.
Having been in Japan many, many times, I will tell you that that's almost exactly how they are.
They kiss with the yolk thing?
They are incredible.
He's been there.
Yeah.
It's in his autobiography
Excellent.
coming out.
I just didn't know. I want to try the kissing yolk thing sometime.
Oh, it's gross. It's gross. It's the grossest moment in the entire movie. Oh,
It is.
Oh, God.
I don't know. But no, that's a fun one to check out. And with that, we are all at a show, but we want to thank our guest, Simon Majumdar, for joining us. Thank you so much, Simon.
My very great pleasure. It's always a joy to spend time with you guys. Thank you very much.
We like it too, and we'll make sure to have you back very soon. Maybe to defend Thor Ragnarok. We might find another one.
That could be fun.
It could be fun.
All right.
And I think might be your first time defending something. No, you defended 10, of course, but
I defended 10, which I thought was
they're
very good.
very similar films. And hope everyone will join us again as well as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Dull?
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.